practice session in the controversies CME of KSOS CME series. He was the first person who came to my mind to chair the session. And basically, what I discussed with him was like, most of the ophthalmologists in India are not hospital owners. See, they are basically employees like me, Gopal, and most of the people here. So see why many of us are not going into starting our own hospitals is basically because there is some we are scared, like what will happen when we go into it. And we don't know if we are really fit to start my hospital. Also, somebody like me or Prakash or Gopal, who would prefer to be, even if maybe Dr. Senthil says, okay, you have an entrepreneurial mindset and you're really good, you can start your practice. Then see, even then, I mean, maybe because we don't have the entrepreneurial mindset, we would prefer to be employees. But when we are employees, we would like to have the best out of it. See, we would like to know, see, how can we go for maybe salary negotiations? See, when we go for salary negotiations, we should actually know, see, what is the financial situation of the hospital. See, I mean, the managers might tell something, the MD might tell something, or the chairman might tell something, but we should know what is the financial situation and what is the actual. So you know, in numbers terms, what your contribution is. You should actually know what in financial term, what is your contribution, and probably then only you can actually sit down and negotiate with your employers. So I've explained these to him and Debasish sir also. Dr. Senthil has been really kind enough to plan the whole session and get the faculty, and to introduce the faculty. We have Dr. Vinod with us. He's a very senior ophthalmologist from Palakkad, Dr. Vinod Kumar. He works at Palana Hospital in Palakkad and has his own clinic. He's a visiting surgeon at Vasan Eye Care Hospitals. I request Dr. Vinod to introduce the speakers. Dr. Vinod, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sreeni. Am I audible?
Not very clear. Can you come closer? Your audio is not very clear.
Okay.
Dr. Vinod?
Better? Yes, better?
Not very clear as such. Can you try again, Dr. Vinod?
Yeah, now?
Okay. Yeah. Please do.
Okay, fine. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Sreeni, KSOS and the PSOS for giving me.
Dr. Vinod, it's not very clear.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Sreeni, KSOS and PSOS for giving me an opportunity to moderate the session. I think this topic of practice management, practice choices will have more controversies rather than the other three sessions, and these sort of discussions will keep going on and on. But we have three prolific speakers who will guide us in very many situations. I myself have been in the corporate setup in an eye hospital for about 10 to 13 years, but now switched off to a multi-specialty hospital, developed a small an ophthalmology department and an operation theater, and I'm practicing in that particular hospital now for the past 1 to 2 years. After having gone through so many things in the corporate setup. About the present session, I think Dr. Senthil, Dr. Debasish and Dr. Sridhar will be able to give guidance on practice management in the clinical setup, hospital setup in an operation theater. And Dr. Senthil has created, he was the brain behind the Ophthalmology Trade event in Chennai. We conducted every year in Chennai, and also he has a vast knowledge of the
Dr. Vinod, can you be a bit louder?
Yeah. He would also guide us on the practice management with regards to the number of patients, doctors, ratios, and also with regard to the optical section itself, on whom and how to go about it, whether it is really necessary in optical setup, or how much of difference would it make in a scenario where it is necessary and where it would not be necessary, either a smaller setup or in a larger setup. So I think the mindset is the most important rather than the doing. Performing the practice, it is the mindset that would go a long way. And we have Dr. Senthil who would guide us on that aspect, entrepreneurial mindset. He's working at the Wellcare Healthcare Systems and at the Pranav Eye Care Center. And the other speaker, Dr. Debasish Bhattacharya, a well-known speaker. I've listened to lots of webinars, online webinars during the multiple lockdown sessions we had in the last 2 years. Very senior surgeon from Disha Hospitals in charge of the cataract department of the Disha Eye Care. And also we have Dr. Sridhar Thakur, who will be speaking on the nuts and bolts in an ophthalmic practice management, which would definitely which will definitely guide us on how to go about this. Dr. Senthil, please.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir, audible.
Yeah, there is some disturbance. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Dr. Sreeni and KSOS for this wonderful opportunity. And you mentioned that the session is going to be exciting. I hope we live up to your expectations. And what we thought was over the next 1 hour, we will address a few of those important topics or, as you said, controversies. Because the first controversy for an ophthalmologist or a healthcare practitioner is whether he is a service provider or is a businessman or an entrepreneur. Because doctors have this mindset of not maybe previously about talking about money itself was not right in a doctor's mindset. But I think thanks to KSOS for having a session to discuss about all the managerial aspects of an ophthalmic practice. So not only as somebody having an organization, or it doesn't mean that you have to run your own hospital to have that entrepreneurial mindset. I think we need this kind of a mindset for everyday life also. Even in our family also, there is going to be negotiation. Like maybe your son negotiates with you, and there is always a lot of negotiation and all these aspects of business which happens in a family. Or if you are an employee also, there are all those say you have to negotiate for salary, you still are involved in equipment purchase, you also have to know about the organizational revenues. And so the mindset of entrepreneur is definitely needed, no matter if you're running a hospital or if you're an employee or if you're even trying to run a family. I think it's the crux of what we are trying to do. So in this session, basically, I thought we will have it more of an informal kind of a session. I thought we'll have 3 speakers, and I would address about how an entrepreneur thinks. And so I would like to warn you that there is nothing going to be clinical in the next 45 minutes, 1 hour. It's going to be more of the business aspects only. And so I would talk about how the entrepreneurial mind works, and then we will have Dr. Debasish to talk about his journey of where he converted himself from a practicing ophthalmologist into a entrepreneur. And Dr. Sridhar Thakur on the other side is a doctor by profession, but he has been more into the entrepreneurial side, and he has been instrumental in scaling up Vasan from a small number of centers into 150 plus centers. And Sir Dr. Thakur is also sitting with me. So both of us are together talking today. So why do we need to have this entrepreneurial mindset? Because now with this Consumer Protection Act and all these coming in, hospitals are more considered as hospitals. Hospitals are healthcare business entities, and doctors are more thought of some kind of a service provider who is in the business of healthcare. And the patient of today is more of a healthcare consumer rather than as a, patient alone. So when these kind of changes are happening, so it is natural that we as doctors also have to develop this entrepreneurial mindset. So it's so a doctor is very good as a clinician, but he is not as good as a businessman. So I was reading this book called Range. I would suggest all of you to read this book. It's a wonderful book by an author called David Epstein, where he talks about why generalists triumph in a specialist world. Because as doctors, we are all specialists. So, but as a specialist alone, we may not be very successful, because a medical practice is a kind learning environment. So please follow this, whatever I'm trying to say. I hope I will drive this point into your mind. There are two kinds of environment. One is a kind learning environment, another one is a wicked learning environment. So what is a kind learning environment? Let's take example of a medical practice or a game of golf, or maybe even the chess. So these are replicable scenarios. So let's say in chess, these are the common set of moves which you have to do to succeed. Or in golf, there are a fixed set of steps you have to do to succeed in a game of golf. So medical practice also, basically it's like you are going to do certain activities, like doing a surgery or consulting or identifying a disease is a kind learning environment. So as a doctor, we are very good in a kind learning environment. But on the other hand, running a practice is a wicked learning environment. So what is a wicked learning environment? Because in practice, you are going to have different challenges. It's not going to be every day that you are going to see the similar approaches. Maybe one day there is a regulatory issue, one day there is some patient coming and fighting with you. So to be successful as an entrepreneur, you have to get used to these wicked learning environments. And to have this mindset of a wicked learning environment, or to be successful in a wicked learning environment, you have to not only know the clinical aspects of medicine, but you also have to have some understanding about the business side and all those different scenarios you will face. I hope I'm not confusing you. So have you understood this concept of, I think this is the crux of what I'm going to talk. So the medical practice is a kind learning environment, and a business is a wicked learning environment. So to be successful in a wicked learning environment, you have to acquire more skills, like how do you deal with the patients, how do you handle your staff, what is the finance and regulatory. Let's say somebody from a regulatory authority comes to you, how do you handle? So all these things you have to learn if you have to be successful as a practitioner. So the transformation from being a clinician to a medical practitioner or an entrepreneur is definitely what is required to be running a successful practice, or even to be a successful employee working in an organization. But what we should not forget in this whole thing is, medical practice is not pure business, but it is a business with compassion. So we cannot be too rude or too hard thing as a businessman alone, but this is a business with compassion, and this transformation happens gradually. So when we come out of medical practice, what we think is successful, as if you do a good phaco, or if you do good LASIK, we always think that we are ready for successful practice. But once you step into a clinical practice, that is when you understand that a successful ophthalmic practice is 80% business skills and 20% clinical skills. Maybe many of you might not agree with what I'm trying to say, but see, a doctor like Dr. Debasish or anybody, so the clinical skills, I'm not undermining the value of clinical skills, but you should, to run a successful organization, you should have all those business skills also. So If you improve your business skills to the level of 80%, that is when you will succeed as an independent practitioner. So I'm sure all of you are aware of this cash flow quadrant by this famous author Robert Kiyosaki, where he classifies people into four. I don't have the slide of that, but so basically there are four type of people. One is an employee. So employee is somebody is working for an organization and getting a salary. His risk is very less. The second, say as a doctor, if you work for a government, you are only a pure employee. The second set is called self-employed. I think most of the ophthalmologists fall in the self-employed category, where you start your own hospital and you work for yourself. But most of the time we confuse the self-employed into an entrepreneur. Self-employed is not a businessman, because rather than working for somebody, you are working in your own organization. The third set of people is called a businessman or an entrepreneur. Like let's say Dr. Debasish is now moved from a self-employed into an entrepreneurial level. Basically, he creates a system which works for him. Like Dr. Sridhar Thakur is with me. So he has created a system which is actually working for him, and he doesn't have to be seeing patients, or he doesn't have to actually deliver the service, but the system keeps working for him and generating revenues and creating impact. So the third segment is called entrepreneur. So and the fourth segment is called investor. So when you're investing in multiple companies, let's say Warren Buffett, he doesn't work, or he doesn't do day-to-day entrepreneurial activity, but he has invested in businesses which are creating him revenues. So that's the investor category. So I think now we have to see ourselves into which are the categories. So if you are a doctor who is working for an organization, you are in the employed category. And if you are going to be a doctor who is working in your own hospital, you are going to be in the self-employed category. So most of us are in the self-employed category. And the third segment is the entrepreneur. So most of the time we also want to move away from a self-employed into the entrepreneurial category and investor. So there can be a combination of all these things. So if you want to shine in all these segments, you also have to acquire the common business skills. So this is a very common statement. Most of the ophthalmologists are too busy to be successful. So how can somebody be too busy but not successful? So let's take example of many of my friends who are running successful practices. They say like, sir, I've reached a peak. So for me, I cannot see more number. I can only see so many number of patients in a day, and I can only do so many surgeries in a day. I don't have time for anything else. So most of the time you become too busy, but your revenue also takes a stagnation. So the revenue doesn't increase. So your revenue gets to a particular level. So meaning you reach to a stage where you are too busy, but you're not very successful. So how do you break out and come out of this mindset? And how do you actually not be busy and also be very successful? I think that is one of the entrepreneurial mindset which you have to develop. So I hope I'm being followed, because I cannot see the people. So basically, this is another concept or mindset which you have to develop. What is the difference between working in the business and working on the business? So if you are a self-employed person, and if you are going to work every day, see patients, you are actually working in your business. You are though you might think that you are a businessman, but still you are an employee of your own organization. But on the other hand, if you sit and what is the working on the business? So if you sit and think like, see how is the corporate eye care chain doing, or what is going to happen to my practice within the next 5 years, or do I have an exit plan, or how do I reduce my time and still keep earning the same revenue, or how do I actually make my time more efficient in the practice? How do I focus on the more value-added service which I'm getting in my practice? So when you sit and think, I think that is when you start working on the business. So most of the ophthalmologist lives are spent working in the business. I'll say that I see a lot of ophthalmologists are 65, 70 years old. Still every day they keep seeing 100 patients in a day, keep doing surgery, and they feel good about it. There's nothing wrong in feeling good about it, but have you really worked on the business? Let's, for example, there was an ophthalmologist, I don't want to mention his name, in Chennai. So he was working all over his life till 70 years, never thought of having an assistant, or he never thought, we are all not immortal. Every day, I think everybody will have some time where we have to either exit our business or exit the world. So most of the doctors keep working till 70 years, and then suddenly he developed some health ailment, and within 6 months he died. So what happens to something which is created over 70 years, and when it's not, he's not able to have somebody to take care of the practice. So what we create, our lifelong thing goes off in one day, and then what the family gets is nothing but the value of the depreciated equipment. So have you worked on the business, or have the many of the ophthalmologists have worked on the business? When you hit say 50 years or 60 years, you start thinking about succession. You start thinking to whom you can hand over the practice, or what will be my value of my practice. Can I add a junior doctor who will kind of support me so that I can give the practice to him? Or can I exit my practice to a corporate? All those things are working on the business. I think we have to change our mindset from working in the business day to day to working on the business. I think this is something very important as an entrepreneur, or somebody who is thinking of converting himself into an entrepreneur has to develop. I think this is something which I also learned from Dr. Sridhar Thakur. So business is nothing but two things: managing people and managing process. So in India or in any place, managing the people is the most difficult thing. So if you are able to manage people, I think you will be able to manage a successful business. So how do you manage the people working under you? How do you manage the people and get the best out of them? I think that is something very important. And you have a process in your organization. Is the process kind of being followed, and is the process being effective in generating revenues? I think if you focus on these 2 points and then build up on that, I don't have time to get into the details of how do you do that, but these are the gross headings of how do you actually approach your practice in entrepreneurial way. So then the another thing is, now as you see, there are so many the common complaint which we hear from doctors is that there are too many hospitals which have come up, and in my city, in my road, there are 10 doctors practicing, and how do I compete? And there is competition from the charities, there is competition from the corporate, and now there is this new competition from the healthcare aggregators. So how do I actually compete with them? And so only way to compete is how do you differentiate. So how do you differentiate your practice from the rest of them? So how do I stay different? I think differentiate or die is a very famous quote from the marketing guru. And so how do you differentiate your practice? So basically, we can use 3 ways to differentiate. One thing is differentiation based on the skill. So most of the time we say, oh, I'm the first doctor to do LASIK in my city, or I'm the first doctor to do phaco, or I'm the first doctor to do the femto LASIK and all these things. But the differentiation based on skill is easily replicable, because every other doctor can also learn phaco and he will compete with you on the skill. So the next way to differentiate, I think some of us try, is I am a very low cost player. So basically, I charge lesser than the other person. A differentiation based on price is something too risky, because in healthcare, the price competition is always seen as something of low value. So if you say I can do phaco for 7,500 rupees, I recently also saw some hospital advertising, we do topical phaco for 7,500 rupees. I think it is a way of actually degrading yourself also, basically because when you differentiate on your price, the patient also immediately perceives that, okay, this is going to be of low quality. So what will I get for a 7,500 rupees phaco, or what will I get for a 10,000 rupees LASIK? I think very wrong strategy to try to differentiate yourself based on the price. The third thing which we try to do is differentiation based on technology. I think most of the doctors fall for this. I'm the first person to have the femto LASIK in Mumbai, or I'm the first person to have the latest equipment. I don't mind buying a 5 crore worth of machine so that I can use it as a way to market myself. But I think economically, I don't know how much sense it makes, because I'm sure out of 100 people owning a LASIK machine, 90 of them are not paying from the revenue of the LASIK machine. They're paying cataract income for the LASIK. So don't try to differentiate based on technology alone, because that is the marketing ploy paid by the companies to make you buy those costly equipments. So, okay, so you cannot differentiate based on these things. So how do you actually differentiate? So maybe this is another important slide I want you to follow in my topic. So how does this economic value progressed over the last many decades? So let's take 200 years back, everybody was working in the field. So everybody was in the agriculture. So they were getting paid for the commodities. So you grow 100 bags of grain, rice, you get paid for that. After say 150 years back, you had this industrial economy coming in. So basically, let's say Ford started a car company. So 50% of work was done by man and 50% was done by equipment. So the industrial economy started kicking in. And then what happened over the last say 100 years or 50 years, you had the service economy. So basically, let's say a travel service or a lot of these kind of businesses, financial services. So people started paying for the services. But what we see now with, let's say, for example, companies like Amazon or even Starbucks kind of a coffee, so people start paying for experiences. So one of the most important way an individual ophthalmologist can differentiate himself is by delivering good customer experiences, good patient experiences. So no matter how many charities come, how many corporates come in your nearby you, but patients come to you for that customized service which you provide, and patients want that one-on-one interaction with the individual practitioner. So they come to you for that niche which you provide. So if you provide good customer experience, if you provide the trust component, I think that is where you can differentiate yourself from. That is why most of the private practices are surviving, because they have their own database of patients who keep referring them, their families and friends and everything, because they know that this is a good doctor and I know him personally and he's a trustable doctor. So for example, let's say I will give you an example. I have one of my friends who is having his own medical college, and they have a college in Chennai also. So there are 200, 300 doctors working for him. So he brings his mother to us for cataract surgery. Though our hospital is not a large corporate or anything, but he brings his parents to us for cataract surgery and not to the charitable or not to corporate hospitals in Chennai. Basically, because he knows that he can get that customized service and the good customer experience, which he will never get in another hospital. So that's where you can actually try to focus and differentiate yourself. Let us take this example on the right. So basically, let's say coffee as a small commodity is you can charge say 10 rupees, and when the same coffee is delivered in a restaurant like Saravana Bhavan, you can get it at 35 rupees. And the same coffee in a 5-star hotel will cost you a little bit more, but same coffee in a Starbucks will cost 150, 200 rupees, because you're not paying only for the coffee, but you're also paying for the experience which you get in that Starbucks. I'm not meaning you should have 5-star kind of a hospital, but even with the minimal infrastructure, is your patient getting good customer experience? Is there a clean toilet in your hospital? Is somebody in the reception attending the patient properly? Is the phone calls being handled properly in your hospital? So we provide a lot of experiences in ophthalmology, like buying a pair of glasses or a cataract surgery and LASIK. All these are experiences. So if you are able to provide good customer service, I think you can also charge more to the patient and also differentiate yourself from the rest of the crowd. I'm taking a lot of time. So another thing, basically, there are 3-4 more concepts which I'd like to drive. Basically, many of the practices don't understand the difference between public relationship and advertising. So I see a lot of doctors advertising, just as I sold cataract surgery for 7,500 rupees, or I'm the best surgeon in the, we are the first to offer a femto. A patient always perceives an advertisement as something too commercial and soliciting. So whenever somebody advertises, a patient always thinks that this doctor doctor doesn't have, maybe, this doctor doesn't have too many patients. So is it the way, why, this is the reason he is advertising and trying to get patients. Don't try to advertise. But what you have to do is focus more on public relations. So what is public relations? So maybe doing a community outreach activity, or writing something about eye care in the newspaper, or creating, getting into a TV program to clarify doubts to patients about a particular eye care conditions. These kind of PR activity, or maybe you can, if you carefully observe some of the corporate hospital, they'll always say first time a patient from Africa or a Pakistani child came to Chennai and get cured for corneal blindness. All these things create a good public relationship activity. So rather than trying to go and advertise directly, try to focus more on PR. So PR doesn't cost too much also. If you have a really interesting stuff, people will definitely come to you. Maybe you can now use the digital tools like having a good website, a website which has content about the doctor and maybe the various procedure, a website giving information about various kinds of eye treatments available, not only in your facility, but generally, let's say, if your website contains details of diabetic retinopathy. So somebody searching for diabetic retinopathy might land in your website, and then he might also drop in as your patient. Rather than telling, I am having this machine to treat diabetic retinopathy, you focus more on public relation, public awareness initiatives. I think that is when you will, so understanding this difference between a PR and advertising is very important to develop that entrepreneurial mindset. So another concept I would like to drive, maybe you can go in and read about this, because these are, there are books about these concepts, but I just like to introduce you to them so that it initiates your brain to go and start working and reading more about this. So basically there are blue oceans and red oceans. So what is the red ocean? Already existing businesses are red oceans. So let's say a restaurant or a supermarket, or even for that example, an eye clinic is an existing red ocean. Basically because there is too much of competition in a red ocean, and only way to beat the competition, as I said, is trying to differentiate yourself either based on skill or price or maybe technology. And then it is a kind of a difficult situation for everybody. So let's take, is there any blue ocean which you can identify in ophthalmology? So for example, the companies which are existing today, like a Zomato or Uber or Google, they were never there 10 years, 15 years back. So they have identified those blue oceans and they have started these companies. So is there any blue oceans in ophthalmology which you can tap up? For example, say a cosmetic lid drip, or only an eye clinic focusing on cosmetic eye treatments, or maybe telemedicine, tele-ophthalmology. So some kind of red or blue oceans which you can identify. I'll say even our charitable hospital like Aravind, they created those blue oceans where they understood that we can still treat a lot of patients for free and then also charge the people who can afford and create a big organization. So they identified those blue oceans early on. So try to identify blue oceans within the domain of ophthalmology, which you can try to tap on. So this will be the last point I would like to try. So basically, every business will reach a point of stagnation. So let's say when you start your practice, the initial 10 years, you have been growing on an upscale. So every day, the number of patients keep increasing. And then after that, most of the practices reach a plateau. So say 40 or 50 patients or 100 patients in a day. So that is when you have to really think of jumping the curve. So because if you are always in the curve, that the curve will flatten. I just heard Dr. Thakur also talk about this. Every business will actually start a downward spiral if you are not trying to jump the curve. So how do you jump the curve? Maybe you try to collaborate with a corporate, or maybe you start a non-profit wing, or maybe you try to create a group practice. So there are multiple ways to jump the curve. Let me give you a small example. So in the US, maybe 100 years back, there was no way of making the ice. So the ice used to be cut from the Actually, I'm So in the US, a long time back, there used to be these ice cutters who used to cut ice from the lakes, and then that was used for food preservation and all. But this was like a difficult thing, and then people are not having it. It is seasonal, so there were lots of difficulties in this model. So what happened was people started making in the ice cutting from the lakes converted to the ice factories. So where people started making these ice in the factories, and then they were supplying it to industries and homes. And then what happened was people then came in the refrigerators where you can make ice in your own homes. So this is a classical jumping in the curve where the ice harvesters were getting into ice factories and then refrigerators. But the problem is actually the people who are cutting ice from the lakes never jumped the curve to making those ice factories. Ice factories were built by different people. And people who are running ice factories never invented the refrigerator. So all the previous two people, because they failed to jump the curve, they went out of the business. So basically, that is what will happen if we also don't anticipate in our practices as to how do we jump the curve. So I think that is something really important if you want to actually think like an entrepreneur. Another one point which I'd like to add before finishing is, so the exit plan, I think I've already discussed. We have to definitely think about how do we exit our practice, or even if you're employee also, how do you go from that to the next level? I think you should always have that plan. The most common problem which I see among ophthalmologists is we always interact with one particular type of people. Most of our friends, most of our interactions are always with ophthalmologists. So you have to think of networking with people who have different mindset, different skill sets. So join organizations which are not related to ophthalmology, maybe a business organization, maybe a Rotary Club, or maybe the entrepreneurs. There is one group in Chennai called the Indus Entrepreneurs. So where you interact with a lot of different mindset people. I think that is something which we have to develop. Then we get a lot of ideas from them. I think if you really want to develop an entrepreneurial mindset, start also networking with people who are not like you. Because as an ophthalmologist, we are a specialist. We only think in particular terms. So we have to actually interact with people who are from the different domains. Say you interact with somebody who is an architect, or somebody who is a government employee, or maybe interact with a financial consultant. Interacting meaning I'm not telling discussing with them, but you really have to associate with the people from different specialities. That is when you actually grow as an entrepreneur. For example, Leonardo da Vinci created those wonderful paintings because he was not only a painter, he was also a trained anatomist, he was also a sculptor, he was also trained in military warfare. So basically, he had all those exposures which led him to create better paintings than people. Say Michelangelo was more a painter, but Da Vinci's creations are still there because he had all those different exposures. Same with Van Gogh also, because Van Gogh did at least 5-6 different jobs before he started painting at the age of 20, and before he died, I think within 35 3 years, he created those wonderful paintings. I think an entrepreneurial mindset will grow when you start interacting with a lot of different people. So we have our conference in Chennai in July. I would request if you want to know more about developing your practice, this is going to be a 2-day conference only about practice development. It's not for only for people who want to start practice, having their own private practices, but even somebody who is an employee can definitely join and support the conference. Thank you, Dr. Sreeni, and I think I've taken a lot of time. So has Dr. Debasish joined? We can have him, or
Sir has joined. Sir has joined.
So can we take some questions now? Maybe we can all have a little bit of interaction, because Dr. Thakur doesn't have a presentation. We would like to have it more of a discussion for next 15 minutes, and then I think sir can do this presentation. Is there any questions from the audience? Or?
Yeah, see, how effective is you said about website? How effective is a social media advertising, like Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all those?
Yeah. I think if you're not in social media, you are not existent today. So social media, because see, somebody like our children, they are in a different generation. Like my son, if he wants to approach a hospital or book an appointment with somebody, so he doesn't want to talk to anybody. So he wants to go to online and check the website of that organization. Let's say that somebody wants to come to Dr. Sreeni, he wants to know more about you even before he actually sees you, and he doesn't want to talk. Is there an online way? So how do I find about Dr. Sreeni? Is there a LinkedIn profile? Do you have a Facebook profile? And does your website contain your details? And do you, even to reach your place, people don't ask anybody. So they go on the Google map. And what are the Google reviews of your patient? I think social media importance is out of question. It's 100% important, and we have to focus on that. That is a separate topic. I think we
Yeah.
have to.
Yeah, and basically your talk was on the entrepreneurial mindset, how to get into it. Is there an age, the upper limit age at which you should jump the wagon? Like you said, somebody was practicing till the age of 70, and then he passed away, and everything was lost. Like because it's an individual based practice, and everything is on him. So see, somebody like him to go into something different, see on on job, like whatever, you employ somebody and do it. Or so is there an upper limit or an ideal age, or younger stage at which I know that there might not be a young age, but is there an upper limit age at which you can?
You mean, is there a upper age at which you can start on your own?
Yeah.
I think that is individual, but as per traditional, maybe I'll ask Dr. Thakur also to, maybe Dr. Debasish will say, most of the doctors working in this organization, I think at the age of 38 or more than 38, 39, I think they start their practices. And even in a business angle, most of the very successful companies are started by people who are over the age of 45. Like say, I can say Dr. Sridhar Thakur sitting with me. So he has started Infigo quite late, because till the time he has gained all those experiences. Though this now we see a lot of this cult of youngsters like 20, 21-year-olds doing these startups. These people don't have that experience. So I would ask Dr. Thakur to answer.
Yeah, good afternoon all. I think it's a good question to deal with. One need to be very clear about whether you have that kind of mindset to start on your own. So mindset plays very important role. As Dr. Senthil has shown a slide of exit in his presentation, that is like exiting your mindset from an employee base to an entrepreneur base. So it's very important that when do you wish to exit that phase of your mind and get yourself fit into a new role. It requires a lot of intrinsic thinking, lot of means you will need a lot of accommodation in mind when you look at entrepreneurship. So starting on your own means starting your life as an entrepreneur. So at what age is immaterial? I think it depends absolutely on a stage of mind you have. And once you have that stage of mind, you feel you are very open-minded, you are experimental based, you have managerial skills of managing people, managing relationships, accommodating new thought processes, and very flexible mindset where you have your own values retained in that. Once you have that, I think you can certainly go for your practice. Of course, one important part is you must have enough financial resources to start with, because you need to have your own business model when you start with that, how many patients you want to see a day, what is the kind of revenue you are looking out of those patients, what kind of conversions you are looking at on a surgical side. So what will be the revenue you look at the end of month, what is your cost, and what is going to leave it for you, whether you are into a deficit phase for initial few months, whether you are into a gain phase for first few months. If you are into a deficit phase, then do you have sufficient finance to support that loss? and you have that you have that funding available, maybe from your own resources or maybe from other resources. You have that, then you have preparation of your mind, building your own team around, choosing right people, and again starting at the right moment. And I told you the right moment is to have a right mindset. I think I have replied to the query.
No, I read something interesting regarding this age of starting. So there are very good examples even in ophthalmology, like Dr. Venkateswamy started quite late. Even the most successful companies, like say McDonald's or KFC, these kind of companies were started by founders at very late ages also. And many times, classical thing is somebody needs that 40-45 years of age to actually understand, learn, experiment and sample different things. So only then most of the successful companies are founded by people over the age of 45 years. Though on the contrary, we only read about this person starting Oyo when he was 19-year-old, and somebody starting this company at 21-year-olds. These are all things which are in the market. But when you see very successful people who are our friends and relatives, most of them would have started by the age of 40 or 45. So it's never late. I think even as an ophthalmologist, I think for him to learn, work with the corporate till 40-45 and then start should be a good way. But that's when you also have the financial capability and all those things to start up on your own. I think maybe Dr. Debasish can add about when do the people leave his organization and start. Sir, I think you have to unmute.
Yeah, Senthil, you are right, because two things. One is you need to understand your profession well to start your journey. And second, you need your value, the value proposition that you have. So you need your initial set of patients and your following. So I think as an institution, we are very careful with the doctors around that age.
40, sir, what is the age? What is the age?
It's that 40. It's
Okay.
that 40. That's where doctors usually try to take their plunge, and rightly so.
So you talked about, this is another question that I wanted to bring up. See, how do I, as a person who is working in a hospital, see the value in me? See, when you start your plunge, you see there are two aspects to my question. See, how see, I want to know is the amount of money, sir.
I think we couldn't hear the last bit.
Yeah.
See, just give random examples. When we talk about.
Yeah, sir. Your presentation, please. Yeah. You want to do your presentation now?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, please.
Sir, you can go ahead with your presentation. Then we can have the discussion based on the time.
Okay, fine. I'll just share my slides. Are my slides visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
So actually, Dr. Senthil told me that he wants my story. So that's where it is. But Columbus was set to discover India, but he discovered America instead. He was punished for that. Little did he know that he had invented the strongest country in the world. And so much in life, occur much more by default than by design, really. But what we need to understand that it is most important, as Senthil pointed out, is that he sailed. So that sailor's mentality, that's venture, is something that differentiates a doctor from an entrepreneur. And essentially, if we see that in those days, I mean, the resources were scarce, but the opportunities were there. But today, probably you have lot of resources, but you need to use those resources to create newer opportunities. So this is then and now, and maybe this is more for the youngsters. And essentially, as I passed my MS, I'm a totally homegrown person. So MBBS, MS in Calcutta, and then applying for the government job was the usual thing. As I entered the door for the interview, the person on the head of the table said, "Oh, we want doctors who want to do postgraduate tubectomies, vasectomies in the villages, and you have done MS ophthalmology." So I just said, "Can I come in?" Then I just said, "Well, sir, if is there any other way that I get in as an ophthalmologist to the government work system, then let us not waste our time." But little did I realize that I was actually talking to the health secretary, the head of the healthcare system, government healthcare system. And sometimes when you call a spade, I think it's important that you call, because somehow later when I analyzed this, obviously I didn't get the government job. But when I analyzed, I said, am I mentally okay with the job? I said, somewhere where I'm not wanted or my services are not wanted, I probably not. And I reacted more out of passion, a passion for ophthalmology, which was very, very much there in me. And because he said something around ophthalmology was something that brought that spade in the spade conversation. Well, again, I mean, you would also understand that, do you fit into that kind of a vision? So essentially, let me tell you that sometimes to the youngsters even, thinking straight is perhaps a very important thing. So not getting the government job, I went on to design a new business. In fact, I was entrusted by the financer, and I went in to design the I was buying retinal lasers in 1984. So that was very big for me. And so I set up the entire thing. And I just thought that I'll start as a consultant there practicing. But when the D-Day came, everything was done in 6 months, and I all did it free of cost. And then all the big doctors in the city came and then said, this young man can only be probably an RMO in this setup, and he cannot sit as a consultant. Which again, this inequity was something I could not agree to. So somehow in that whole meeting, I reacted by saying that, okay, sir, I think I'm not in. And someday I'm going to have a bigger hospital than this. So it was a jerk, but a mission involved. And just see, it was just two incidents it took to switch over from a person's mindset who was planning for a government job. And 6 months later, he was actually dreaming of having a hospital of his own. A mission had already evolved, but I didn't have any idea of how this is to carry it forward. So, those days it was, these were the two options. And the third option was to go back to spectacle shops and practice as an ophthalmologist, where actually my name was small, MS, and an optometrist who was there for 25 years, his name was boldly displayed, rightly so. He had given the time, no regrets on that. So, but their few patients would be there to, come and consult me. So most of the time I would sit outside and watch this pani puri wala who used to do brisk business outside. And he was very soothing, like he was a complete man. He said, "Oh Mataji, aapka beta Mumbai mein theek na?" And pani puris are going along also. Then he said, "Sir, aapka tikha theek hai na?" But he is actually building up customer relationships. He was, compassionate. Aapka beta ekdam theek hai na? Then he said, the other gentleman, इस बार बेटी आएगी ना तो घर में पानी पूरी पार्टी लगा देंगे. So he was, हम जाएंगे. So he is trying to go to his place, shifting a place of business, something like the Zomatos. And the customization, he needs a more sweet, he needs a more chilies in his pani puris. And then he says to the other young guy, "Hey Munna, khel ke aayo, haath dho, uske baad pani puri milega." So, I mean, that discipline, the cleanliness. And then he asked his own young boy and the other guests, "ये लालू का फुचका खाओ, ये कुछ नया सोच के बनाया है, देखिए तो माता जी कैसा है ये, ठीक है, ठीक बनाया बच्चा, and अच्छा है." So he is also promoting his future and he's training it. I mean, he was doing so many tasks. Pani puri was not important. What essentially Senthil said, that today we as ophthalmologists are really very fortunate. Our products, whether we prescribe a spectacle, whether we do a surgery, whether we give a retina injection, all have wonderful outcomes. So the product that we do, and with the equipments and investigation tools available to us, mistakes have become so less, so minimum. So the product is a very defined thing. It's only 3-4% where the science and our hard things go wrong. Rest 95% of the time we are great. So essentially, we are dealing with a very good product. It is we have to imbibe the art of this science. So essentially, that is what we are talking about. Because essentially, let us understand the mindset. I had pani puris before also, but watching this man in the business was when I had this mindset about a hospital. So I was observing him because I had a dream in me, I had a mission in me, and I was really keen on getting this street education. So it was not about pani puri, it was about distributing happiness. So this one big thing I took from him, and he said, if nothing works for me, at least I can do this one. I can actually do what he is doing. Then one day, a patient came to my clinic and with his mother who had cataract. So I said it was a mature cataract. We had to operate intracap those days. I used to take 600 rupees. So I told him, said, this is what your mother needs. The man disappeared, never to come back. After 1 month, suddenly he was standing by my side and he opened his feast on the table. And it was 600 rupees. My assistant started counting. There were 1 rupee coins, 5 rupee coins, 20 rupees denominations, all kinds of things. And you could understand the nature in which it had been accumulated. I said, "Ab kya karna hai, Doctor Sahab?" I said, "Mata ji ko le jao, us nursing home mein bharti karo." On the day of operation, which was the next day, he didn't come because he knew the procedure. The sisters told him. After 2 days, he was not there. And after 2 days, he came. "Mata ji bahut achhi hai, unko dikhta hai, bahut acha hai." So I said, "Where were you 2 days?" He said, "I was driving my rickshaw." So then I asked, I mean, I understand that this is a big proposition for you. Why didn't you go to a government hospital? He said, no, there's a man whom I respect very much. He said to come to you. And I realized that this is a man who has aspirations. And he said, my mother has taken care of me. Why should I take her to a government hospital? खैराती नहीं चलेगा. हमको माता जी का अच्छा इलाज करना है. So this pride of this common man, this aspiration is continuously growing. And let me tell you, I operated on him 4 or 5 years back in the best of the cataract packages. So that is a curve of choosing your patients, at which cycles or where do you serve. So this is something Dinanath told me, the Lord of the Poor. So dreams are important because dreams take you, because you always keep on thinking, so you are ready. So when the opportunity comes, we see it first. Anybody who dreams sees it first. You share it with like-minded people. So naturally, you are surrounded by people who believe in a similar cause. So that helped us, and that when the IOL started, because before that I was not finding an avenue as to how will I have a bigger hospital than this. So I saw it before my peers, and I was implanting since 1988. I learned it. We were all self-taught at that time. Resources were limited, but of course I agree, the days have changed and the opportunities were much more. And so during that time, Mr. Appa Swami gave me 30 free IOLs and a Nikon head microscope, and pay as you earn. So on that basis, so I used to work with a municipal free clinic. So I bought the patients, and the first 30 IOLs, which were given free with the microscope, I implanted on them, perfected my technique, and then went with my private patients. So that is how I first started my clinic. But obviously, I would emphasize that in starting our enterprise, we must know that our services are limited by its geographic location. So location is very important, because that decides the people whom you serve, the quality of service, what do you serve, everything. So Barakpur was located away from the city. On the fringes of the city, it was the next district, and we had the long tail of West Bengal, which used to come through Barakpur to go to the city. So that was a wonderful thing, and that propelled me. Another default by design, you may call it. But we have to learn, we learn things from these defaults and create a design in years to come. In this, I pay my respects to this departed soul, wonderful person and a wonderful partner who helped many of the young people to develop their first step. Because you can have a financer, you can handhold with other people, but if you are handholding with a person who has common goals, they understand your problems and be with you all the way. So thank you, Mr. Appa Swami. And I am a doctor because my mother wanted his son to become a doctor. So when I opened my first hospital, this is what she said in the small speech and the small ceremony that we had. He said, son, don't charge something that patients around you cannot come. So what she actually meant is to develop a very inclusive type of a practice or a framework. And she had her own philanthropic ways. And the next word that she said is charge every patient, which was a little confusing. And I asked her to explain. She said that, see, education is, we must the children are small, they are disempowered. We must teach them. They must learn. But when you are literate enough, then it becomes a choice. You cannot thrust health on somebody. They have to make some effort to acquire it. And that is why you should charge, and that will help you to sustain. What she meant is dis-ease is that you are not at ease. So this realization has to be in a person on whom you are actually trying to bring him at ease. So these were the fundamentals. Now, as I said, in those days, my practice, I was doing more than 2,000, as Senthil pointed out. At some time, you see that you can't go any further. And these were the people who were maximizing me in my private practice. And so they were all from the same medical college. So they were one year junior to me. But I was asking them because I knew what is there in the offering and how big is the requirement. So I was saying, but the security of the government job and obviously their family, their wives were the most people, because that was not the culture then. So that was preventing them. And I said, how can I get them in? So the simplest thing is, just sacrifice, just use Gandhiji's ways. So I said, you would like to do business with somebody who has this element. And sacrifice is not a big connotation. It is just giving away your the immediate position of strength for a more efficient future. So it doesn't have very big connotations. So I left my practice, they left their government jobs, and we happily worked for a salary of rupees 10,000 per month in 1997, which was probably a big thing. So essentially, it was Dr. Samar Basak who brought in, and they were the best doctors at the time. So it was not that I was looking for subordinates. I had really affiliated myself with wonderful working colleagues. So Dr. Samar Basak, I learned time discipline, time management, academics, presentations, everything around being that good doctor stuff from him. And he is the backbone of our institution, Disha, today. Tushar Hajra was a person who personified honesty and hard work. He simply said that, just hard work can convert stone into God. I can only work hard, so I'll just work hard. And of course, Sinha was wonderful in strategy. So he brought Dr. Sunil Parekh to start vitreoretinal surgery back then. And Sinha was in charge of vitreoretina. He had done his fellowship from Shankar Netralaya. Basak was in cornea, and Tushar used to do glaucoma and oculoplasty. So it was a wonderful combination, and everybody would pull in for cataract and comprehensive ophthalmology. So this is the team of 4. We started Disha Eye Hospitals on the 1st of May, 1997. We are 25 years now down the road. So, and obviously, when we talk about group practice, I see 2 or 3 macro points. One is the prime mover should be the man of highest seniority. There must be some level of friendship or personal relationship, because there will be hard times in group practice and difference of opinions. But there must be one person who can command the situation. So essentially, and he should be the prime mover of the group practice. So it works not on and the third thing is it doesn't operate only because people nowadays affiliate, because there is more economic sense or financial sense in a group practice. There has to be an offering advantage. You have to, that practice has to offer more to the patients. It has to create a value proposition rather than just merely for improving costs of your service. And this collegiality of ours, it was wildfire, I must tell you. And we instantly got, the patients, they want to see their godmen, as a team. They don't want to see their godmen fighting. So they want to see them together into some kind of a good activity. So our only statement was that, see, you going down south for treatment, I mean, give us a try. We will do it for you. We'll try our best. And that what caught the imagination of people, and also the youngsters and this whole bunch of good doctors whom we have today. The first 7 of them joined within 2 years. They were the other young people, and they came in very young. And then we started teaching, training, the staff, the technicians, the optometrists, and the entire system. We adopted the systems or the MIS in 2002. And today we are on the AWS platform, and all our 17 centers are connected with, in every possible way, we talk to each other. And the delegation and everything that was required. We learned amongst ourselves the corporate ways. And as Senthil pointed out, it's very important to see, what is happening in other professions, how the good things of other doings, or in a Starbucks or in Elon Musk's or organization or in Facebook, what is that they are doing? Can we actually incorporate something of that into our practice, into our organization? So these were things which we always constantly interacted amongst all of us and tried to imbibe within us. And now let us come to the most important part, is the sustainability portion. Now this young kid is somebody whom I used to cuddle, and my daughter's friend. And I was meeting her after a long time. And this is what she had become. Now, I can't cuddle her now. And I said, my God, you've become a beautiful young lady. And her words were exceptional. Said, Uncle, I had no other option. Yes, I mean, let us understand one fact, that growth is not optional. It is a mandate. We have to grow. We cannot stagnate, because anywhere we stagnate, then we go downhill, as the curve showed by Senthil. So we have to be on the on merging, on affiliating, on finding blue oceans, whatever it takes. But we have to be sustainable, to help the organization bloom. We constantly have to imbibe one thing, and that's growth. And so we did it simply because we had a very good start. We just followed our following. What were the barriers? So they wanted the services proximity to their homes. So when we started, we were seeing 31,000 patients, and today we see 12 lakh patients. So we started these hospitals one after the other, and none of these hospitals are below 15,000 square feet. So, because we were sure of the following, because we were following the following. So wherever we used to see that we are seeing, say, 50 patients a day, we knew that if we go in 2 years' time, it's going to be 200 patients. so we can justify that we've set up a critical mark of a hospital, that this is the kind of hospital we're looking forward to. We knew how much scale we need to upscale there. So, and this is probably the best way of justifying surplus, because the people blame us that we are too slow and we don't take private equities and that kind of stuff, but we are growing through internal accruals. But you are respecting the word of mouth that the patient's giving us. You are the people in our organization who were 15 years, who had trained the technicians. They are now heading centers. We don't have big personalities and big people and managers and all these big qualified persons running these branches. These people manage the show, and we see that their involvement and commitment is very high, and we have provided them the element to grow. That is why growth is so important. It helps to grow the internal customer, the organization. So this is how we are now 17, 18 branches, and so we are seeing, as we see the year, even in the year of COVID, I think we did pretty well, because we have a lot of urban, semi-rural branches. So the semi-rural took care of the city deficits. So that way it was quite a balance, and we are also getting the backlogs coming in. So from 72, we have now doing 80,000 surgeries, cataract, and of course the whole list of surgeries. So essentially, it is, growth and the strength of doing well is very important. So this is our figures for the over the years, right from 1997. So if you see cataracts, we started with almost my numbers, 2,600, and now we do 82,000. And these are all paid cases. I mean, our average ticket size is around 20,000, 19,000 something odd. So, and these are our revenues till now. So that sustainability is a very important word, and we have to sustain everything that we do. So essentially, coming back to what I was talking is, initially I would say that a good doctor is a great entrepreneur. I always feel, and it is probably the good doctor can become a great doctor if he just focuses on what Senthil said, that he has to learn. He does everything. He takes the risk. He works hard. He has a dream. He is passionate about his profession. He has all the entrepreneurial skills. The only thing that keeps him off is probably we are too diverted on our how to do that little thing to perfection. Yes, that is important. But at the same time, please convert the entire science into an experience for your patient, because that gives the biggest outcome, compliance. You need your patients to comply. If we have not understood the value of giving a total experience to our patient, the patients won't follow up with us, won't probably even follow our prescription. So essentially, it has to be an experience for the best patient care. So we have to focus on an entrepreneur. By saying that you need to be an entrepreneur, I don't say that you have. I know Kerala is a state where, that those small cities, those small towns are the most beautiful places and the best places to evolve. And so I think it makes sense that, that small, sweet practices that we have can bloom wonderfully well in Kerala. So I would say that all that I said about the default by design, or the learning, the courage to sail, it all comes as maybe as a default, but take it. Don't say that, oh, today we have very few opportunities, but there are more resources to balance them. I mean, obviously you don't need an interview like this to change your decision. It can be a informed choice, or it can be a thought choice. You don't need to say somebody and create enemies, so that when they laugh, oh, this guy is now working in a spectacle shop, you get more energy. No, I'll show them. You need not have all this to develop, but uh, I would say that it's a small thing. Take it small and build it up. It will, teach you. Learn from people around you, and the street people are the most wonderful people. Your patients are the best educators. They will teach all that Senthil has talked to you, and keep on distributing happiness. I think we will have a great team, and we will always get to work and grow, because growth is the eventual option. Otherwise, we grow all older. Thank you very much for all the attention. Thank you very much again. And thank you, Sreeni, for this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, sir. I know that you're in a meeting. You took your time out for being with us. Sir, the first time I talked to him, he didn't know me actually. I just asked him some doubts about some survey that I was doing during the COVID time, and I asked a little bit of doubt. He took about 45 minutes to explain the in and out of practices and everything. So, sir, thanks a lot for joining us. And if it is time, maybe Dr. Senthil, we should let sir leave.
Yeah. Sir, maybe before sir leaves, thank you, sir, for whatever I put in theory. I think sir has shown that it is practically possible. So it has been like a confirmation of all the points which I had talked. So thank you, sir. And
Thank
it is
you.
also
Thank you.
inspirational. And one thing is, maybe as the famous economist Morgan Housel used to say, what works for somebody might not work for you. So we might, because the situations are different, like the geography may be different, the conditions may be different, the time may be different. So we should actually have to not to emulate anybody or try to replicate somebody's success, but we have to find out what is our niche and maybe try to build upon that. I think that is also very important, because otherwise, if I today think that, oh, I can also become like Disha, maybe that might lead to sometimes dissatisfaction also, because
No,
Disha.
the same, Senthil. We need to, focus on the basic subsets and skills which makes a good doctor a great doctor. I mean, if we treat our patients, we do him good. But if we win the patient, we create value, because then he refers patients, he complies, he talks about us, he does everything for us. So it is this value proposition. And once you understand this word value, that we and patient experiences, like Senthil's, that one slide was so good. Bengal was great in the times when it was about the Gangetic Bengal producing so much of food. So it was first about food, then it became about commodities, then it became about services. Bangalore became great. Now, if people become, anybody who gives that experience collectively of all these things together, is somebody who will create more value. And value is when you upscale your values all the time, you are doing good to the world, and you are doing good to the entire people all the stakeholders in that value chain.
Thank you, sir. And even when you wanted to convert your practice into a group practice, I think that is when you started thinking of the jumping the curve. Had you been only practicing alone, maybe the growth might not have.
It could be the decisive jump in the curve. Yes.
Yeah. So I think those are the things. So do you have an exit plan, sir? Maybe can I ask you what is the plan of exit?
No, I don't think we have an exit plan at all. Essentially, we are grooming people in the organization whom we can pass the buck on. Yes, our children are doctors. My son is a manager. Is an MBA. So they are forming their own group. And I think one time we can just pass on the baton.
So maybe this I wanted to ask you, like, apart from ophthalmology, what are your passions? Like, how do you spend your time apart from ophthalmology?
Actually, honestly, I enjoy all this so much that yes, there were childhood pastimes and passions, but I really don't have much time to. I can make time, but now I think as the younger ones, they keep on taking the hot seats. I'll have more time for them. I used to I read books like you, and I love to read. I read a lot of bios, and I paint. So I left painting 40 years back. I don't know if I will catch the brush at my when I am not when I am older. I think probably I'll take to do these two.
Do you really miss it? Like if you keep on enjoying what you're doing,
I think my organization gives me enough endorphins to keep me, upbeat. I really don't miss them. No. Yeah. I think the organization and my family gives me enough endorphins. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Sreeni, how much time do we have? Another 15 minutes?
20 minutes.
Okay, fine. So now I think we will come to the most important talk. I would like to call Dr. Thakur. So maybe the generalist. So Dr. Debasish was a specialist who also learned the skills of a generalist and created a successful organization. So Dr. Thakur is an MBBS doctor, medical doctor, but decided upon early stages that he had more passion into the managerial side and building organizations. And he was with Vasan for quite a long time till they reached 150 locations. And over the last few years, he has been running the Infigo Life Sciences, which is a large eye care chain coming up in Maharashtra with around 15 to 11 centers now and building up. So he is an operational man, and maybe all the questions you had on the negotiations, and that's why I put this thing as nuts and bolts. Maybe Dr. Thakur can talk on what are all the basic things which not only for a person running a hospital, but even as an employee, he would be touching on all those points which you wanted to access for. You want to have a question? No, you can, so maybe I suggest you ask me the question. So maybe the first question I would like to ask Dr. Thakur is on so say somebody, most of the doctors, let's say out of 23,000 ophthalmologists in India, majority are still employed in hospitals as an employee. So how do you think somebody working in a hospital, what are all the skills? Because when you are working for a hospital, what happens is you don't learn anything apart from the clinical side. So how can an employee also involve more in the managerial aspect, and maybe also develop some skills apart from which might be helpful when he starts his own organization later on.
Yeah, good afternoon all. I think doctors being self-employed professionals, they can't be employees anytime. They are engaged in their own skill sets, building their own skill sets, and building them as an entrepreneurs from day one. So they are never employees. So when I look at, or when I say they are not employees anytime, means from day one of their practice, whether they are working for somebody, it means indirectly they are working for self. Like I am an ophthalmologist, maybe a fresher, maybe a general ophthalmologist, or maybe a surgeon. What I should look at is I have to be honestly practicing my skill sets. I must engage my patient with me. I must deliver the best of skill set to the people or to the patient. And I must ensure that patient gets the best surgical or clinical outcome. That is like owning my own practice, which is very important. So indirectly, what I am doing is I am preparing to be an entrepreneur in future whenever the time is set for me. It may be 10 years down the line, it may be 15 years down the line, it may be at 45 age, it may be at 40 age. So it is preparing my mind. So I see a patient. So it's a learning for me. Even though I am employed at somebody else's place as a doctor, I am getting a patient. It is certainly not because of my name. It might be because of the place where I am practicing. So a patient has come to me where I understand clearly it is not my patient. It has come to me as an institution's patient. So I engage myself with the patient. I engage by means of time, by means of communication, by means of practicing my knowledge, and I build that relationship where patient comes back to me. The same thing happens when I start my own practice, that people start coming back to me because of my name. So I built my name where I practice. And that happens absolutely by engaging me 100% by skills, by knowledge, by communication, and by innovation. So if it happens, I develop myself as an entrepreneur.
To add to what Dr. Thakur said, when you're employed in an organization, you should take it as an opportunity that somebody is paying you to learn. So nobody will, let's say, you get a salary of 1 lakh. Somebody is paying you 1 lakh to learn the private practice. So basically, the best employee is somebody who can give more than what he is paid for. So if you have that approach, and try to involve in the overall organizational activities, whatever is permitted as per the rule of that organization. I think that is when you can actually grow. For example, I used to work in a medical college. My first job was in a medical college, but this was a person who started as a school teacher. He was from my own village only, and he created this group called SRM Group of Institutions. It's a large educational institutions in South India. So I used it as an opportunity not to work in the ophthalmology department, but I actually understand the business of the educational system and how this man was able to build that and how is he managing it and all those things. I think that kind of an opportunity is what somebody who is employed should approach. Say working in Disha is a very good opportunity for you to learn a lot of things apart from doing surgeries and consultation, because Disha will teach you about the patient experience, how the counselors are counseling, and all those things are what will help you replicate that thing when you start your own practice. I think that is something very important. So the next common thing which I see among the young ophthalmologists is this fear of starting, or this kind of I'll say a negative attitude. Sir, there is so much of competition, and so the charitable hospitals are coming up, so many corporates are coming up, and ophthalmology practice takes a lot of money to start. And many of the young ophthalmologists these days, I see they don't want to start on their own, even after working for some time. So maybe I'd like to ask Dr. Thakur about the potential he sees in ophthalmology, because he has started the chain of hospitals in Maharashtra, which is already saturated, but doing extremely well. So, and he has the aim to not even go beyond Maharashtra, because he feels there is a huge potential in Maharashtra alone to open maybe 100, 200 hospitals. So, maybe Dr. Thakur can share his experience and about what are the potential he sees for ophthalmology in India.
I think, as Senthil rightly said, each of us, being an ophthalmologist, being a practitioner, has a huge potential. If we are clear about what kind of market we are into, what is the demand from the market, and where do you want to establish ourselves, maybe as a practitioner or maybe as a surgeon. And are we going to work alone? Are we going to work as a group? That is going to decide whether you are going to tap that potential very rightly. If you look at the metro cities of India, largely the cost of starting a practice and a waiting period is too high. Because if you get into, even if you get into a place like Cochin, where I think I was there in Cochin in 2005, 2006, 3 years I stayed there. I stayed in Trivandrum also for 1 year. And I have built some 7-8 centers there in Kerala between 2005 to 2007. So my understanding about Kerala is great. I think it's a very good market, but being a vast territory, elongated territory from north to south, you go into interior parts, there is a scope. There may not be a large scope left in a potentially in larger cities, but if you are getting into small pocket areas where there is a place which is attached to, say, 50, 60 small potential markets, or maybe 10, 15 potential markets, what you need to do is you must ensure that you are getting 30 to 40 patients a day. So the place must have a potential to cater to around 30 to 40 patients. You must have a strategy that how are you going to get those 30, 40 patients a day. Then you must choose a technology, like what kind of technology you need to have, because your cost and investment are many times inversely proportional. So what kind of investment you are looking at? Because your huge investment should not make your services costly. When you are new into the market, you must ensure that in terms of price, you are competitive. You may be very good at skills, but on one side, you are very good at skills, but same time, you may not be able to afford the best of technology because it will attract huge investment. So what suits you best? What suits best to the market? Like, I need not to have a femto laser. I need not to have a femto cataract. I need not to have very high-end technology or imported machines. I may go with Indian machines initially, so that my services stands very reachable to the people in terms of cost. So I stand competitive in the market. Although I am very good at skill set, I am very good at knowledge. So it becomes a very good combination between skills and the technology. And you start delivering clinical and surgical outcomes to the patient in a very limited diaspora, in a limited geography. Do not look at very big dreams. Look at building it brick by brick. Like today, my plan is to see in this month, I see 10 patients, but I see 10 patients very diligently. I evaluate them properly. I investigate them rightly. I ensure the best of communication to them, and I ensure that they got the value out of it. So they got the value out of what discussion they had with me, the consultation they had with me, and they had the value out of the money which they have paid. So if these three combinations work together rightly, then certainly there is a potential. As I said, you must choose a right place. Place very important. It plays a very important role in succeeding in making your practice successful. And rest of the part, as I said, 80, it is like Pareto's law, 20, 80, 20 rule. Like 80% of things are set right, then you will get the best of results. But 20% of mistakes may offer you 80% of failure. So you be very careful in choosing the place. You be very careful in choosing the time, and you be very careful in investing your money. I think if these three things are rightly evaluated, then starting practice is not at all an issue. I think the rest of the things Dr. Debasish has really shared the quantum of knowledge with all of us. There is a lot to learn from it. And if we really take that message, I think starting practice should not be a discussion.
Dr. Sreeni, do you have any questions from the audience? Maybe we can take.
No, I have questions. See, I like continuing with that initial this thing. As an employee, as Dr. Thakur said, like you learn a lot, and as you said, you learn a lot on job. So, what are the financial aspects of the hospital that you should know about, like how the turnover works, how the EBITDA works? So, and during my introduction, I said also, like how much of an inspiration that I or Minu or Prakash or Prashop gets from your talks and Dr. Debash's talks. People like me might still stay to be. Dr. Thakur said we are not employees, but in effect we are employees. So what? See, how do you, or I can put it in another way. See, if I sell myself, or any of these employees sell themselves to another group, so how do you value yourself? That is one. Or I can put it in another way. How does the employee value himself in that hospital, and how does the management put a value on an employee in that hospital? What are the parameters that management considers when you put a value on that person?
Right. I think again to come back to my initial opening thought, the value of employee absolutely depends upon what kind of mindset he carries. He has to have a mindset of working as a team member, where he knows his role very well. What is his role? Whether his role is there as a general ophthalmologist, whether his role as a cataract surgeon, whether his role as a PR surgeon, or a cornea or a glaucoma or other specialty field. I think he should understand his role first very well, and he should stick to his role. Same time, he must be contributing in building other people or other members of the team, where he adds great value by supporting other people, where other people also grow. So that becomes his own value. It means he's adding value to himself. That is second. The third part is what kind of skill set he is having. Like I have seen, there are people like who are very good surgeons, extremely good at surgical skills, but very good at communication skills. So what kind of communication you carry? It's not only the kind of clinical acumen you carry. You have to be excellent communicator, because what you know, you should be able to deliver it to people. So that becomes one factor which adds value to you. And again, how open you are to new ideas. Like something has been suggested to you, some changes are suggested to you. Are you open to accommodate? Are you open to consider those suggestions? Are you very positive on that? At least maybe initial phase you may not like them, but you are open to practice, and then able to, based upon your own experience, you are able to debate. Maybe this is not a feasible suggestion, so you go back to square one, go back to your own assumptions. So how open you are in practicing. So all those factors will define your value as a team member or as an employee. As in future you want to start your practice, your value proposition is absolutely different. But as an employee, I have told you these 3-4 points, like the mindset you have, the kind of attitude you have, the kind of skill sets you have, and ability to gel with others, ability to accommodate others, and be a contributing team member, that will define your value.
See, as a person who is running the hospitals, when it might be difficult to answer, or I'm not very sure. See, what is the because I'm asking for all this employee doctors. See, because I get queries also. Sreeni, I mean, how much should I? How much pay hike should I ask for? Because my contract is getting renewed. So, is there any calculation on which the management decides, okay, this is the hike that this person should get, and see what is the, because when these people go for negotiations or requests, it should not be a very low this thing, and it should not be very unreasonable also. So is there any calculation? I know that it might be a stupid question, but these are queries that that come to me, because when people just keep asking me. So I'm just putting that it's not come in the chat box, but these are questions that have come to me, and I'm just putting it to you.
Right. I think I will answer very straight. It is very important when you look at your own value, and when you look at any hike on annual basis, yearly basis, you must understand the balance sheet of a business. That is profit and loss account of the business. Yes. Any business is driven by P&L. The value is defined by the kind of numbers you have in P&L. Fine. So the owner of the place will be able to share that value with you, subject to he is making money out of it. The percentage might be debatable, that few people may share more, few people may share less. That depends upon the attitude of a person who owns it. So to understand the balance sheet, roughly how balance sheet is defined, like how is the cost allocation. If you are working with a place which is a rental place, which is taken on a rental basis, then it roughly takes around 5 to 7% of your total revenue. It should be ideally. I am talking about the ideal scenario. Case to case basis, it may differ. So around 5 to 7% value goes towards rent out of your total revenue. The manpower cost. The manpower cost is like the number of people employed within the center, except doctors, right? So doctors, let us keep separate. So should not be exceeding beyond 15%. Should not be exceeding beyond 15% of revenue. Doctor's cost should not exceed beyond 20%. 20% of revenue. 25% will be the cost of consumables, like the kind of materials, IOLs, surgical materials you use in OT or in OPDs. That overall cost becomes around 25%, right? Then your marketing cost or other miscellaneous cost or administrative cost goes around 7 to 8%, right? Then your AMCs, other contracts, that cost roughly goes around 2 to 3%. So all put together, if you see, largely big established hospitals in a private setup, like there is one doctor who is employing 4 to 5 doctors around him. So it becomes a cluster practice where one person is owner and 3-4 doctors are employed. He earns roughly around 50% of EBITDA in his own practice. So 50% of earning before interest, tax, and depreciation, right? So in that, how much he shares with you absolutely depends upon his own decision. But any person, any doctor will not be able to share more than 20% of his top line to that doctor. Indirectly speaking, if you are getting 2 lakhs rupees as your salary, it means you must generate around 25 to 26 lakhs rupees as your revenue contribution. It may come through consultation, it may come through investigations, it may come through if you are a cataract surgeon, it may come through your surgeries. If you are a VR surgeon, it may come through the injections, it may come through diagnostics, it may come through surgeries. Whatever it is, minimum 15 times of your salary, you must contribute. If that is done, then you become a value proposition for the person for whom you are working with, right? and then you will be able to get a good salary hike year on year. Now, year on year, whether the business grows in that proportion, certainly not. There are ups and downs. So every year you may not get the same kind of hike because it is directly linked to the top line you are making. Retina, for example, if you are a VR surgeon, you are a very integral and important part for the entire practice pattern because you are handling complications, you are adding completion to the setup. But you look at the P&L of retina practice. What happens? The retina cost of retina consumables is very high. So in cataract and non-retina practice, if your consumable part is around 25%, in retina practice, it goes to around 36 to 40%. So in retina model, the investment is very high. So retina surgeons may not get that kind of hike in long run. Initially for retainership purpose, because I want to retain a retina surgeon, I may give more. But within 3 to 4 years of my association, I may end up with a bottleneck that I may not be able to give very large chunk to retina doctor. Initially, I can do it, but not in a latter phase. So you must be seeing as a case study, wherever there are retina surgeons working, they end up in dissociation after 4 to 5 years. It is largely because the outgo is more to them and the income generated or revenue generated, there is a disproportion. I think I have answered your question.
Yeah. I mean, excellent. Like this is actually what I wanted. But the calculation 2 lakh, 25 lakhs. I mean, can I put another calculation? Like you said, almost 15 times or 12.5 times, whatever. Somebody who is being paid 5 lakhs in a hospital. So that means that he should generate 75 lakhs to the hospital. I mean, that I can't really digest because see that how many hospitals would have total turnover of the hospitals in the range of 75 to 1 crore or more. Like let's take it as 1 crore. So this fellow alone should be like if what you said is to be followed. This fellow by himself should be making a revenue of 75 lakhs.
Not necessary. Not necessary. I think 5 lakhs, if you are talking about a case of 5 lakhs, he must be a surgeon. And he must be a leading surgeon in that group, in that sector. In that case, what is expected out of him, he should be able to do around 80 to 100 surgeries a month. That is enough. So his cost will be calculated per surgery, not purely on OPD or diagnostics or other revenue he generates.
Okay. Probably this answers the question.
So for a surgeon, it is directly related to number of surgeries.
Yeah, I mean, there'll be more number of people watching later also because I mean, some of our members have already started having the lunch also because they are encroaching on the lunch time. Any of those who are on the Zoom, Prashop, Prakash, Sarvana, anyone has any queries?
Yeah, I'd like to just confirm that figure that you said, 2 lakhs to 25 lakhs, 10 to 15 times. Is there any methodology you followed to arrive at that figure? You said earlier that 20%, it should not go above 20%. The cost of the, total amount of revenue out of that 20% should not, more than 20% should not go to the doctors. So how that 10 to 15 times, how did that figure? Because it's a little difficult for me to digest that. Like Sreeni
so as I said initially, to just put it in a reverse way, if my hospital revenue around 25 lakhs, if my hospital revenue is around 25 lakhs, my total budget for paying out to doctors should not exceed more than 6 to 7 lakhs.
Okay,
yes,
fine.
That's understood. That's it.
Yeah. So if Dr. Senthil might permits me, and I don't think we can take 5-10 minutes more. Is it okay with you? You had your lunch. Is it okay?
No problem. When we come to Kerala, you can buy us lunch.
No. See, like Dr. Thakur, like you have been associated with Vasan, and I said I told Dr. Senthil maybe we'll take up this discussion, and even I asked Debasish sir also this discussion. This is because there are a huge lot of doctors who have been employed, who are employed with Vasan. And even those who were approached by Vasan and who never went to, like me, who never went to them, would actually like to know why the Vasan model failed. Is it okay if I ask that question?
It's a little complicated question to answer. But I will, rather than answering about Vasan, I would like to elaborate or answer it on a larger platform.
Yeah.
Like why organizations are failing. Like in India, last 15 years, this competition or this initiative is actually started by Vasan, where Vasan became a national brand with a presence in 142 cities. Right? It was a great organization. And I think it is an example for world ophthalmology also, that how the brand has to be spread and how one brand captures a multilinguistic or diversified market in a large country like India. It's an example or a case study. So when it becomes a case study, it becomes a case study for how it has succeeded, and it becomes a case study how it has been at decline or failure. I think the slide of Dr. Senthil itself shows that any organization reaches to one particular phase where you need to add innovation or you need to add a factor which will give you a further jump. I think when you have aging, like you are into practice or you have an organization of 5 to 6 years, you must have a continuous evaluation on quarterly or annual basis that how you have succeeded. Many times what happens is you become successful and you don't understand or you don't try to analyze what made you successful. When you become a failure, you start ending up into blame game rather than getting into analytical game. I think one needs to be analytical in both parts, that is success and a failure. So in a place like India, what happens is you grow like Vasan. I remember I started Vasan first in the first hospital. Most of you may not be knowing, the first hospital of Vasan was started in Kerala, not in Tamil Nadu.
Yeah, Srikanth joined you. I know of the.
Because, no, that was in Dr. Srikanth. That time it was Agarwal Vasan's hospital. It was Vasan hospital. Vasan hospital started first in Kochi.
Yes.
Then the second hospital was started in Trivandrum, and then the name of Calicut Hospital was changed as Vasan Eye Care Hospital. So that's how the story comes up. Now, when you were a brand of Kerala, you were consolidating. You are having 13, 14 centers. You are into Tamil Nadu with 40, 50 centers. You are into Andhra with some 30, 35 centers. You are predominantly a South Indian player. So what is your strength? You are a South Indian player. You know the culture. You are operating in your own land. You know how to do the business. You know how to crack the market. So learning number one is, if you know your territory and if you are the king of territory, be careful in the expansions. When you go into foreign territories, so in India, there are 4 demographic divisions like East, West, North and South. All have different flavor, all have different cultures. So Vasan was predominantly successful in Western India too. Vasan was successful partly into Eastern India. Vasan had relatively problems in North India, not because of the patient base. It is typically because of cost matrix. And when you start growing, you start getting into hype. Like I have a 2,000 or 5,000 square feet hospital. I go to Delhi, I will have 25,000 square feet hospital. Fine. So 2,000 or 5,000 square feet hospital has given you a name and fame, and you have become successful. Rather than learning from it, you get into a metro city where your costs are high and you go into 20,000 square feet. That becomes your mistake. So many times you make a mistake on cost matrix. Your number of patients, if you see, the number of patients for Vasan across all territories were good. What went wrong was on a cost side. So you have to be very careful when you get into any decision, investment decisions, basically on the cost side and the investment side. As I said in my initial discussion, what kind of technology you are buying, is it necessary? I remember when I was in Cochin, that time we used to do around 150, 160 surgeries a month in Cochin. This is, I am telling you, in 2005. And we used to do around 100 eyes for LASIK. Dr. Kala was with us. It was a good team. Dr. Sunil Kumar, Dr. Jacob Matthew, and Dr. Kala. And VR surgeon was also there. So it was a very good team. It was a very good hospital. All were excellent at their skill sets. And that gave a name and fame to the setup. So choosing right doctors, the moment you grow, Vasan started growing with 142 hospitals. So there was a problem of getting good surgeons because India at that time was not having absolutely with good set of surgeons. So what happens is you choose surgeons, maybe they are very fresh, they are into training phase. So you will have to give them cases. When you give them cases, there might be some mistakes, there might be some complications. It will bring down the name and fame of you. So all those mistakes coming together, largely it was a cost mistake. Then it was a site selection mistake. Then it was entry multiple locations in a single city where your own people start competing with yourself. Like in Bangalore, you have 13 hospitals. In Delhi, you have 8 hospitals. In Calcutta, you have 8 hospitals. I mean, you start competing with each other. So one brand of having 13 hospitals, in Chennai, 25 hospitals. So you must understand, evaluate that should you have a very large kind of presence in a single city, or if you are going into foreign territories, do you have strength, bench strength to cater you? Do you have a managerial strength? So it was a strength, managerial strength was an issue. Cost and investment decision was an issue. And then what happens in India, if your size becomes very big, your size becomes a problem to you and you start getting into issues. Then again, age of the organization. It was almost, I think, 10 years old organization. So jumping didn't happen. So because jumping didn't happen, it collapsed. I think that is how I analyze it in my own way. I may be wrong, but being open most of the centers on west and south side, and later on I was looking into northern areas also. This is what I have learned, because I always try to analyze that why people become successful and why do they get failures. This is my own analysis. But this was a wonderful organization which created an identity for ophthalmologists. Ophthalmologists started getting more money because of this.
Yeah, like me.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. See, Vasan was the best thing to happen to ophthalmology in India, in Kerala particularly. Till that time, it was sort of a camp culture sort of a thing. Like, what ophthalmology? Even it's something that you get cataracts, you get something that you get free from Arvind. So Dr. Arun changed the whole thing. See, I went and met him for the coaching. He just called me, Srikanth, through Srikanth, he called me to Calicut for the coaching branch only. I went, met him, and I told him, I just wanted to see you. I just wanted to see you, see the energy in you. It was really energetic. But probably we, as you explained, everyone should learn a lesson from failures also. So you are explaining why this happened. Could be a lesson to all those people who are attending, because when people might be planning to expand, not in this big scale, but in a smaller scale also. Thank you for explaining all the details of probably what went wrong with Vasan. It'll be a good lesson for everyone who's listening. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to KSOS for giving me an opportunity to share my knowledge and views. Thank you.
Dr. Senthil,
Yes,
you can conclude and
Yeah. So I think hopefully the session was interesting and exciting as you expected, and so it went more than 2 hours. So thank you, Kerala State Ophthalmic Society, for this wonderful opportunity. I'd like to thank Dr. Debasish and Dr. Sridhar Thakur also. Because Dr. Debasish, I think he just sent an email and he came in and talked. And looking forward to more interactions and more number of doctors starting their own practices or even becoming better in their own employment. And please do reach out if you need any support from our side. And thanks, and have a nice day. Thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot. So Rohan will conclude the Dr. Vinod. Final. No, you're muted. Dr. Vinod, you're muted.
I think not really. I think probably it's 2:30, 2:45. It's time to wind up.
Yeah. Rohan, final word from you, and then Prashok can conclude the meeting.
First of all, thanks for the Sreeni and the scientific committee team for organizing such a wonderful CME. And in fact, we had not put enough, we have not put in enough work into this one. Without much work, we got a name also, in fact. So once again, thank you for Sreeni and all the other teams. But anyway, it was a wonderful learning. And the topic selection and all these things were excellent. We know how difficult to get the speakers and arrange the CME like this. Once again, we congratulate all the team members who worked behind this one. And also I thank all our KSOS colleagues who have actively participated in this one. Thanks a lot. Once again, thanks for all the delegates who are watching all this. Thank you.
Prashok, final, you can conclude, please. And
on behalf of the scientific committee of KSOS, I thank the Palakkad Ophthalmic Society, and I thank all the speakers and all the people, all the audience who are watching this. I hope this has been an enlightening experience for you, and I'm sure we will come up with more such interesting CMEs. And thank you, Dr. Sreeni, for designing and arranging the whole concept. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.